Well guys, I'm dumb. What's going on everybody? Welcome back to another episode here at the stable. In the last video we got the engine closer to being started, but we did run into some issues. Houston, we have a problem. More specifically, the header clearance. As you can see, it makes contact with this engine mount. We did go over a couple options that would remedy that issue. One, use different headers. Two, modify that engine mount to clear the header. But there was one other option that I did not go over with you guys, and that is this. For those of you that are unfamiliar, this is a header kit. As you can see, we have our flange right here. This is what's going to be bolted directly onto the block like a regular header would. The flange itself is a 1/2 inch thick, which is really good. And it also comes with these individual runners. So this is pretty much a DIY header kit. Obviously, we still need to buy all the bends and stuff like that. What we would have to do is bolt this directly onto the engine and then mock up and weld all of the tubes and the bends that we have to make in order to clear the engine mounts, the steering rack, etc. It also comes with these merge collectors, which all of these primary tubes are going to go into here, and then this will go into the rest of the exhaust. I have not used one of these header kits before, so it will be a learning experience. Let me know if you guys would want to see us build something like this. I mean, it does seem pretty fun, but it also seems like a lot of work, but it would ensure that our headers fit. But for now, we're going to hold off on the header situation and focus on everything else. Oh man, these headers were so cool looking. Also, unfortunately, that's not the only issue we have. The engine might also have to come out once again because of this guy. This is a reverse flow water pump, which is what originally was bolted onto this engine. This engine came out of a Mercury Mountaineer, which is basically an Explorer, which, long story short, this is a reverse flow water pump and we need a standard flow water pump, which also means we might have to change out the timing cover behind it. So we are facing a couple delays, but we did say we were going to start this engine in May. It is now May. So let's see where we can advance in other ways. We got a couple goodies here that will help us get closer to our goal of starting this car. But before we can do any of this, we got to do something first. We have to solid mount our ignition hub, which consists of two things. One, our starter relay or starter solenoid, and two, our fuse box or fuse blocks. This ignition hub is basically going to distribute the power to the different places where it needs to go. So in the last video, we decided that this was going to be the place for the ignition hub, once again consisting of the starter relay and the mega fuses. So we're going to mark each one of the holes. In order to mount the starter relay, we are going to use a decently sized sheet metal screw because these little ears right here act as the ground for this whole relay. Also, thank you to Robert Lugo for sending us these punches. Somebody also asked, wouldn't it be easier for accessibility and maintenance purposes to put all this stuff in the engine bay where it was originally? Well, the answer for that is yes, but like I said, we want a cleaner engine bay, and putting this under the dash eliminates all of the wiring on the passenger side apron. So that's why. All right, now we can mount our starter solenoid in our freshly drilled holes. But in terms of maintenance, that is a very good question because these solenoids often go bad, and if every time it goes bad I have to crawl under the dash, it's not very fun. But this car is not meant to be a perfect daily driver with great ease of maintenance. This car, more than anything, is an experiment, and with the condition that we bought this car in, there is nowhere else it would have gone other than the crusher. With the relocation of the engine and the relocation of the wiring and cutting into the firewall, I wouldn't even consider this car a Mustang anymore because it's not a Mustang, it's a ScrapStang. Some people have called it a hack job or a sin to the Mustang community, but while those people are angry at what we're doing here, we're gonna be too busy burning the rubber off of these tires to care. Sorry, got a little distracted there. Anyway, our starter solenoid is solid mounted. Well guys, I'm dumb because I can't drill out these holes with this solenoid in the way. Off it goes. All right, back to business. For the mounting of these mega fuse holders, we're going to be using the same style screws that we did for the starter solenoid, but we have these washers with this rubber end on it. That way, once it's installed, it is less likely to hurt the plastic. All right, so this guy's going to go mounted about right here. I also took these covers off so you can get a better idea. Alrighty, with the starter solenoid and the bus bar solid mounted, now we could get into what we bought to wire that ignition hub. To start off, we have our battery cable right here, which is 11 feet of 1/0 cable. And this is some pretty thick stuff, guys. It is normally used as a welding cable. And no, we're likely not going to use all 11 feet of it. The battery is either going to be mounted in the rear seat area or somewhere in the trunk. So that's why I bought 11 feet of this stuff. And this gauge of wire or cable is a bit overkill for the ScrapStang, but it's better to have it be overkill than to have it burn down. Next up, we have this thinner cable. It is 4 gauge, and this is what is going to be hooked up to our alternator. The Speedway harness had already included a cable for the alternator, but if we look at these side by side, this one being the Speedway cable and this one being the one I just bought, there's a notable difference. Because we are going with a 100 amp alternator, we do have to upsize our wire in order for it to handle the increased current. These cars from the factory came with an alternator that produced about 60 amps. So if you were to be rebuilding or rewiring your car to the stock setup, the included wires should be more than fine. Next up, we got a couple goodies. Of course, some terminal ends for our wires, as well as some mega fuses. These little guys are going to be the safeguard within that bus bar. These are 125 amp fuses. Like I said, we are going with a 100 amp alternator, so just a step above that should be more than fine. Those mega fuses are therefore going to be installed right on these bus bars, just about like that. Also, we're missing one of the screws up here because that one needs to be a different length, but that's what it looks like. So if we refer back to our diagram here, we have our starter solenoid, and the starter solenoid has to be fed with a 12-volt source directly from the battery. So we're gonna grab our chunky cable. And another thing about going with the cable gauge this thick is making sure it actually fits through all the crevices it needs to. So that fat cable needs to run up the A-pillar, down through the door sill, over the quarter panel, and out the rear. Exhibit A, our cable doesn't really fit through here. That's because it's a little bit pinched. Not to worry though, there's a fix for that. Oh no, we chipped the paint, guys. It's totaled. Cool, that looks a lot better. And what do you know? Fits freely now. And looking from the inside, this cable is going to pop out through there. It should go something like this. And no, we're not going to run the cable bare like this when it comes down to it. We are going to wrap it in some sort of protective sleeve just so all the sharp edges and stuff like that won't chafe it or cut through it. So then it's going to follow the door sill, which is almost a perfect height for it. There's still enough room for that protective material to be wrapped with. Taking a look at the door sill, you can see just how damaged it is that this cable won't even go through it because it's all bent up and chewed up right there. Because somewhere along its life, it got hit right about right here. It's all crinkled and messed up now. Not to worry though, we've got fixes. All right, after a good beating with the hammer and the mallet, it's now a different shape. I used an assortment of tools in order to get the shape I wanted. For example, this thing, I don't really know what it is, but I just hammered it in here and that spread both of the pieces to the proper length. Once you pass this ridge, there's a bit of unevenness in the metals. The gaps kind of close and open back up. So I stuck this spacer in there and hammered it until it was halfway through. And for those of you that are thinking, geez, Angel, you gotta take it easy, man. I don't think I can do anything worse than what has already been done to this car. Like, I don't know who in the hell went crazy with the flux core and did all this mess. Like, look at this. Instead of body filler, they used cement. Anyway, getting off topic here, but this wire now fits through perfectly. And once this wire goes through this door sill, it'll then go up and through towards the quarter panel. Now that it is through the door sill, we can now route it into the quarter panel towards the trunk. So look at all these holes that were patched with either mud or cement or whatever. Look at this. Through this hole, we can see the battery cable. Now I'm going to feed the wire towards the trunk. Also, this piece right here, it's not meant to be this big of a hole. I don't know why they tore it up like this. Maybe it was to do their repair on this quarter panel, but that's butchered as well. And looking in the trunk, haha, we got a battery cable. So we're gonna pull the rest of it through the trunk. I think that is pretty much it. There's no kinks or bends anywhere throughout. All right, battery cable is now where it is supposed to be. Let's recap. The battery cable is going to feed our starter solenoid. It then goes down and through the door sill and over the quarter panel and down into the trunk area. And once again, this cable is going to be wrapped in a protective sleeve because of corners like this one and like this one. Okay, I'm gonna take out the cable part that connects to the solenoid. There's body filler on the door sills. That is interesting. Anyway, I'm gonna remove the cable that is going towards the solenoid so we could add our terminal end. That brings us to the last thing we bought, this little guy. This is a wire crimping tool for terminals like this. Instead of using one of those handle style terminals, these just go in like this and they get hammered and we're good to go. You could also put these in a vise and squish the terminal ends onto the cable. Okay, so with our battery cable stripped, I'm gonna go ahead and slip on the terminal end. This crimper is actually pretty interesting. I have not used one of these before, so you guys are gonna learn with me. Butt it up against there, and it just says to give it a good whack with the hammer. All right, it doesn't only squish it, it has a sort of V shape, so the bottom gets shaped into a V while the top pushes down, conforming it into that V shape. And just like that, we have our battery connection. All right, so the cable goes through once again and bolts up right to our solenoid. Okay, so pretending that there's a battery in the trunk and that this other end of the cable is hooked up, our ignition solenoid is now hot. Now this has to pass power to our bus bar. Just like our diagram states, this is the wire that we just installed. There has to be another wire on the same terminal that goes to the bus bar, and that is the 4-gauge wire we mentioned earlier. So we have to have this wire jump across from the starter solenoid terminal to one of these. So it's a relatively short cable. So we're gonna give it the same treatment as the other cable. Alrighty, she's in there and she's secure. Cool beans, that's it. All right, with this terminal end installed, we could now accurately see where we need to cut the other side. Like I said, it's gonna be pretty short, maybe somewhere right here. And with our giant Knipex pliers, easy peasy. And once again, I'm gonna give it a good whack. She's secure. All right, let's see how this looks. All right, so now we have the link between the starter solenoid and the bus bar done. I probably could have made it a little bit longer to add some slack, but there's gonna be no movement up here, so it should be fine. All right, so we have power coming in from the battery, hits the solenoid, then that goes to our bus bar. At the bus bar, both fuses are gonna be linked or jumped together on one end, and on this side it's going to go towards the fuse box, and on this one towards the alternator. And for that alternator cable, we're going to once again use the 4-gauge. This alternator cable is going to get hooked up right here. And the reason I put this one horizontally instead of vertically like the other one is because if you guys remember, right here we made a pass-through for the firewall, which is right there. So if we pass this cable through, Well, I take it back because the pass-through that we made no longer works. No longer works because when we had originally made it, we tested it with the thinner gauge wire that came with the Speedway kit, but if you guys remember, we upgraded to this thicker 4-gauge wire, so now it doesn't pass through. Ah, never mind. I see what happened now. So it does fit through, but once it is tightened, it makes a waterproof seal. It's tight against the wire. I can't really pull it out unless I try really hard, but once I loosen it, it goes in and out pretty easy. Now we can do it a different way. We'll install the first piece, route our wire through. All right, so here's what I'm thinking for routing. So it's gonna go through the firewall right here, and then it's gonna hit this P-clamp that's gonna keep it from dangling and out of the way of the headers. Then it's gonna go towards the bottom. Obviously it's gonna be tucked a little bit nicer with another clamp or something, some sort of tie down. And then voila, we're at the alternator. This is what it looks like down here. As you can see, it's pretty neat. There's not a whole lot going on. I mean, considering we don't have a lot of the wires on here yet, but this is a good start. But there is an issue. Since we did increase the gauge of that alternator wire, it is now too thick for another wire to go through, which would have been the starter wire. So we now have to make another pass through, probably somewhere on top of it, because the starter wire also has to come out through here and end up somewhere right here. It shouldn't be too long, but the starter wire has to connect to this terminal right here and then follow the same path as the alternator wire through the firewall. Also, we can't really make the connection for the alternator just yet because, well, we don't have an alternator. The starter is on the way though, so that should be hooked up next. So we have the connection done from the battery to the solenoid. We have the connection done from the solenoid to the fuse blocks, and we also have the connection done from the alternator to the fuse block. Alrighty, so far we're looking good. We're making progress. The next connections to be made are the starter wire as well as the main fuse box wire. The main fuse box wire is going to be connected to this terminal right here and then be routed upwards. It's going to follow these wires. It will then go through the dashboard, which will then be connected to this red wire right here, which in turn will bring power to that entire fuse panel right there. And that will complete what is probably the hardest part of doing this wiring. It would not be this complicated if we did the stock style harness and the stock routing of the wiring, but since I like making my life complicated, we redesigned the way this car is going to be wired, therefore making it a little bit more difficult. Guys, I apologize if it feels like we're making slow progress. I promise we're working as fast as we can here. Also, we will be announcing the 10 winners of the Knipex Cobra plier set tomorrow on a live stream. Make sure you guys tune in because the winners have exactly 1 week to claim their prize. If not, we will respin and choose another winner. Also, before I forget, we've got mail. This one's interesting. Fans all over the world. Holy crap. Whoever sent this, you win. You win. See, we don't get a YouTube gold plaque or a diamond plaque. This right here, this means a lot more. This is going straight up. 100% worth it. That is just one of the coolest things you guys have sent. Thank you guys, and thank you for 10K. And last but not least, a little T-stat. We got a nice 180-degree thermostat for the Stang. I can't stop looking at it. It being written on a cardboard box like that just symbolizes everything that this channel is about. You guys are so damn awesome. Once again, the live stream will take place tomorrow, May 3rd at around 4 p.m. Phoenix time. There is some pretty big news coming up for this channel, for the ScrapStang, so make sure you guys tune into that live stream tomorrow. I might tell you guys, I did drop a couple hints in this video, but with that being said, we are out of time. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.